Jenna Lee. Donald Trump, as you just saw, wrapping up a rally in Miami, the first of 3 events for him today in that must-win state of Florida. He talked about a rigged system and then called on the audience to get out and vote.
The polls are all saying we're going to win Florida. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Get out there and vote. This is a movement like we have never seen in this country before. These crowds, the enthusiasm, the love. Got to get out and vote. Real change begins with immediately repealing and replacing Obamacare.
In the meantime, Hillary Clinton also in Florida, making a surprise appearance at an early voting site in Fort Lauderdale. Now she's heading to 2 states that could also have a big impact on Tuesday and will have a big impact on Tuesday, Arizona and Nevada. Despite the news of a revived FBI email investigation, Clinton is holding out hope for a big win. We have Fox team coverage. Ed Henry is following the latest on the Clinton email investigation from Washington. But first, we go to Rich Edson, who's live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Rich?
Good afternoon, Jenna. And on her way from here in Fort Lauderdale to the airport, Hillary Clinton stopped by a mall in Broward County. It is an early polling location. This is her campaign team is saying that Florida is the most important swing state for them. And as polling is showing and early returns here are showing some problems for Hillary Clinton, that she is behind the pace that President Barack Obama was in early voting for Democrats voting, who was in 2012. And there are concerns among Democrats for Hillary Clinton getting out the Barack Obama coalition from 2008 and 2012, particularly minority voters and even the liberal voters of the Bernie Sanders coalition. Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail continues to savage Donald Trump, saying that he would be dangerous for women and dangerous for the United States because of his erratic behavior. He's not someone who should be in control of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. This is Clinton yesterday at one of her campaign appearances responding to a Trump protester at a rally.
I am sick and tired of the negative, dark, divisive, dangerous vision and behavior of people who support Donald Trump. It is time for us to say no. We are not going backwards. We're going forward into a brighter future.
Clinton is heading and deploying resources to 2 states that are pretty unusual for Democrats this time of year. First, she's off to Arizona. It's a state that no Democrat has won on the presidential level since her husband did it in 1996 in his reelect. However, a new poll there from Monmouth University surveyed last week shows a very tight race with Hillary Clinton trailing Donald Trump by only 1 percentage point, 46 to 45. On Friday, she goes to Detroit. That, on the other side of things, is a state, Michigan, that Democrats are typically almost not guaranteed to win, but it's a state that they usually win, and it's one that a Detroit Free Press poll shows she's up there 41 to 34. Jenna, back to you.
Rich, thank you.
Well, Wikileaks drops another batch of Clinton emails today, bringing the total to more than 43,000 with 6 days left until Election Day. Ed Henry has pretty much memorized all 43,000. He's been digging through the latest records. He's live in Washington with more. Ed.
John, good to see you. You know, what's interesting is how much time the Clinton camp has spent talking about Donald Trump and why won't he release his tax returns. And yet we now see from these leaked emails that in 2015, as Hillary Clinton released some tax records, her staff was deeply concerned about the income they'd be revealing, the speech money, and connecting the dots on pay-to-play. Specifically, they talk in one email about concerns about Bill Clinton. You see him there with his wife, and the fact that he had worked for Laureate, a for-profit college where he served as honorary chancellor and brought in nearly $18 million for that post when it wasn't clear what he was actually doing for the money. Look at this email from Brian Fallon, a spokesman for Clinton, to John Podesta, July 2015. Quote, reporters will also scrutinize the 2013 speech list for overlap between speech hosts and campaign/foundation donors that could fuel pay-to-play storylines. Despite these inevitable angles, based on the framing performed in the earlier rounds of stories, we will have given ourselves the best possible fighting chance of promoting the most helpful storylines. You can see how they were worried about pay for play while they dismiss it now and say this is just critics bringing it up. And then you see right there Peter Kadzik, a top Justice Department official, and John Podesta. Recent stories about how they're pretty close. Kadzik used to represent John Podesta and now is involved in helping to oversee the Justice Department investigation of Huma Abedin. Well, look at this email from May 2015. Kadzik to Podesta, quote, "There's a oversight hearing on the Hill today where the head of our civil division at Justice will testify, likely to get questions on State Department emails involving Clinton, of course." He went on to say there was a new government filing in terms of the State Department producing Clinton emails, and it was going to take a long time to get those emails out. Inside information coming from the Justice Department to Podesta. Here's the interesting part, John. Peter Kadzik didn't use his Justice Department email. Of course, that would go into the official record. Instead, sent it from his Gmail account. Now it's out there because of WikiLeaks, but it shows you maybe some collusion there between the Justice Department and the Clinton camp, the kind of thing that's raising eyebrows right now, John.
And what's the number again that college paid to Bill Clinton? $13 million?
And nearly $18 million.
$18 million.
To be an honorary chancellor. I feel like there's something like that in your future, John. Not soon, but years and years from now, your vast experience and public profile, you are getting that. You are getting that.
People wonder why college is so expensive, and that's part of the reason why. Ed Henry, thank you.
You're right.
I mean, you wouldn't turn it down.
I guess not.
But you're just saying, we just got to put in context. All right, a Fox News alert on some brand new poll numbers suggesting a very tight race, as we've been talking about, as we head to the finish line. Some new CNN ORC polls, specifically looking at 4 battleground states. In Arizona, Trump is now leading Clinton by 4 points there. While in the crucial state of Florida, it's a much tighter race, with Clinton ahead by 2. In Nevada, the new poll shows Trump with a solid 6-point lead, 49 to 43%. Clinton had a 2-point edge there just a few weeks ago. She'll be there later today. And Secretary Clinton is still ahead in Pennsylvania by 4 points in that new poll. Both candidates are now focusing on these critical states as their campaigns wind down. Our next guest is assessing what impact the new Clinton email investigation could have in Washington after the election. Writing, quote, FBI Director James Comey dropped a bombshell onto the home stretch of the 2016 presidential race Friday, and it's hard to know exactly what impact it will have on the race. On the other hand, it's relatively easy to predict what the effect will be on how Washington works after the election, and it won't be good. Here now, Jerry Tsai, Washington Bureau Chief of the Wall Street Journal. Jerry, it's great to have you back on the program.
Thanks, Jenna.
What was so nice about your piece is that it opened up a bigger picture thinking, not just on the next few days, but what does our government and our country look like after next week? What's your assessment?
Well, look, it's not been a particularly pretty campaign, and I don't think it's necessarily produced a picture of a Washington that's going to be any easier to govern after the election is over. I mean, I'd like for that to be wrong. I think we probably all would be. But, you know, you're looking at a situation now when you analyze the Comey bombshell of last week, in which, let's say it produces a Donald Trump turnaround and he wins the election. The Democrats will think it's because the FBI stepped in and did so unjustly at the last minute. They will basically be the ones who then will be saying the system was rigged and the election was unfair, and they will question the legitimacy of a Trump presidency. If it's the other way around and Hillary Clinton hangs on to win, which still seems like the most likely scenario, you already have Republicans in Congress just behind me saying they're immediately going to start doing further investigations of the Hillary Clinton emails, how they ended up on Anthony Weiner's laptop, what Huma Abedin knew, why the FBI didn't find those emails earlier. That's not an auspicious start to a new administration under any circumstances, and that's just the starting point. So I think you have a lot of anger in the campaign, a lot of divisiveness in the campaign that sure seems likely to spill over into governance after November 8th.
As you take a step back there, Jerry, and look over, let's say, the next, the past 8 years. We saw the Tea Party movement rise up 2009, 2010, wanting change in Washington, D.C. We've seen that Tea Party movement change, but we see some of the same themes addressed this time around. So as we take a look globally, it's what's happened, again, over the last 8 years. Where do you think we are right now as a country?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I think people want two things that are somewhat contradictory. They want change and they want Washington to work better. Now, maybe those two things go together, but I think what people are really frustrated by, and what Appreciate it.
Well, monthly insurance premiums for some Obamacare plans are expected to go up by an average of 25% next year, but that hasn't stopped people from signing up. Open enrollment for 2017 began Tuesday, and officials say there's already a 50% increase in applications compared to the first day of enrollment last year. This as Obamacare becomes the main talking point for Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, vowing to repeal and replace the health care law if he is elected. Garrett Tenney's live at the White House with more. Garrett?
Hi, Jenna. The White House is keeping a very close eye on these open enrollment numbers because they are crucial to the future of the Affordable Care Act. And after day one, the administration is feeling pretty good within the first 6 hours of open enrollment. Healthcare.gov received more than 60,000 applications, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. That's 50% more than the number of applications it received at the same point last year. What we don't know and what is key to turning around Obamacare, though, is how many of those applications are from young and healthy people rather than those who are older and sicker. It's no secret that dynamic has led to many of the Affordable Care Act's problems over the last 2.5 years. We've seen the cost of premiums go up, the number of health plan options go down, and major insurance companies leaving the Obamacare marketplace after losing billions of dollars. Last week, the White House announced premiums are expected to increase again this year on average of 25% across the country. And ever since then, it's become a hot topic on the campaign trail. Yesterday in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump repeated his vow to repeal and replace Obamacare. By the time this open enrollment period wraps up at the end of January, the administration estimates nearly 14 million people will have selected a plan. If that holds to be the case, it would be 1 million more than last year. Again, though, what's key is who those new signups are. Jenna?
The details on that, who and why they're coming to Obamacare is something we'll be looking at. Garrett, thank you.
Brand new polling out of Pennsylvania. Numbers hot off the presses in a survey conducted by Monmouth University. It shows Hillary Clinton leading in a four-way race, up 4 percentage points over Donald Trump. The latest Fox News scorecard has the state leaning Democratic while giving Clinton a total of 287 electoral votes, 17 more than she needs to win the White House. Let's dive deeper into some of these numbers with Trent Spiner of the New Hampshire Union Leader newspaper and John Frank, political reporter for the Denver Post. Welcome to both of you. There's another poll out, the CNN ORC poll, that has pretty much the same thing, a 4-point gap between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. John, to you first. Pennsylvania is one of those states that Donald Trump has said he can flip into the Republican column. Does it look possible at this point?
The polls certainly are showing a new dynamic in the race, and it's a similar story here in Colorado, where just a couple days ago, a poll put Trump within the margins of Hillary Clinton. So in both these states, Trump's going to have to do well. It looks like he could. We're seeing a lot of pressure on voters here in Colorado in terms of visits from candidates who are saying, turn in your ballots, get them in, let's close this Democratic advantage here. It's a similar story in Pennsylvania and a number of battleground states. Trump has got to make up room on the map.
Sticking with you for the moment, John, Hillary Clinton has also decided to start advertising again in Colorado, devoting some resources to a state she thought she had won.
The polling is one indication it's close, but the better indication is probably that Clinton's back on the air here in Colorado. She hasn't run local TV ads in Colorado since July, and now we're seeing Priorities USA, the super PAC that's favoring her campaign, also coming back into the state, as well as Michigan. So there's going to be a lot more attention on Colorado. We'll have Mike Pence in town today, and the Clinton campaign is stepping up their efforts, bringing former President Bill Clinton to town on Friday.
Trent, one of the issues this time around is enthusiasm among minority voters. Especially in the black community, there isn't the kind of enthusiasm for the Democratic ticket that there was when Barack Obama was running for president in 2008 and 2012.
That's right. And one of the most shocking things about both of these polls that actually just came out in the last hour is just how unfavorable both of these candidates are. Trump and Clinton are tied right around 53, 54% of people who say, look, I don't like either of these candidates, Democrats or Republicans. So that's going to be a significant challenge for them, not just among white voters, but minority voters, too. And the Republican Party said after 2012, look, we need to expand the tent. We need to make sure that minorities are part of the Republican Party. And that effort has largely not happened in this cycle. So it's going to be a challenge for both campaigns.
And what's it looking like in New Hampshire right now, Trent?
Well, in New Hampshire, there's some breaking news. Donald Trump says he's coming back both Friday and Monday night, right before the elections. He's going to have one of his final parties here Monday night in New Hampshire. So I think that what we'll see is it's going to be very tight. I think that Trump really does believe that he can win New Hampshire, even though some of the polls say that maybe he is behind. But the one thing you need to consider is that this year we've seen almost 200 polls in New Hampshire. So I think you need to really take these with a grain of salt. A lot of the polls are skewed towards Democrats. So I think that it's still a tight race here.
He likes New Hampshire. Gave him a big win in the primary.
Yes, he does.
So we'll see. Trent Spiner, John Frank, thank you both.
Is looking into another batch of Clinton emails. Came news that the agency has been investigating the Clinton Foundation. That's from a Wall Street Journal report. The Justice Department reportedly insisted there wasn't enough evidence to move forward. But the National Review has a piece out today entitled "The Clinton Emails Are Critical to the Clinton Foundation Investigation." In that piece, Andrew McCarthy writes this, quote, "The manner in which the State Department was put in the service of the foundation during Hillary Clinton's tenure as secretary is shocking. It is suggestive of a pattern of pay-to-play bribery, the monetizing of political influence, fraud, and obstruction of justice. The Justice Department should be investigating as a possible RICO conspiracy under the federal anti-racketeering laws." I'm joined now by Fox News anchor and lawyer Greg Jarrett. It's quite a piece in the National Review.
It really is. It's worth reading.
It goes through a lot of different connections. Just start us out. What does RICO mean? What is he talking about?
Racketeering, influence, corruption. It's basically using or creating an organization for criminal purposes. In this particular case, the argument's being made by National Review that Hillary Clinton was actually using her foundation for a dual purpose, a front, on the one hand doing good charitable work, but on the other hand funneling money from donors into the foundation in exchange for benefits by virtue of her position as Secretary of State.
Why could the newly found emails be relevant to an investigation that was ongoing, maybe isn't anymore, into the Clinton Foundation?
Because there's an intersection of the private email server and classified documents and the foundation. Hillary Clinton was not only using the unauthorized private server for State Department business and thousands of classified documents on it, but also some of the communications with the foundation were run through that private email server. So investigators who have spent reportedly more than a year looking into the foundation are eager to get their hands on some of these devices newly discovered to determine whether there's any evidence not just of classified information but illegal use of the foundation.
Now, does intent matter in that case in relation to the Clinton Foundation? So Secretary Clinton finds herself Secretary of State. She had this foundation for a while. Yes, there are some intersections, but there was never an intent for those, those to intersect. So yeah, what does that matter?
Let me give you an example. If it is true that Hillary Clinton helped UBS, the bank, avoid the IRS, and in return, her husband received $1.5 million, and her foundation suddenly gets a tenfold increase from UBS to their charity. Is that an exchange of benefits by virtue of her position? If it is, and if it can be proven, that would be corrupt under the statute.
So that's one of the reasons why these emails, as you point out, could be related to the foundation investigation. Now, the Clinton camp will say, well, wait a minute, if the Clinton Foundation was under investigation by the Justice Department, no one's mentioning that Paul Manafort, who was part of the Trump campaign, was also under investigation by the Justice Department. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the FBI is not confirming or denying that there is an investigation into two things. Whether Trump's campaign was communicating with Russia and the government in their hacking campaign, which U.S. intelligence agencies confirm that Russia was behind it. And the second thing they're looking into is the former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. He had dealings with the pro-Russian Ukraine government. He received apparently $12.7 million at one point in time. They're looking to see whether he violated any laws, failing to report his income or failing to register as an agent. Now, I mean, it does seem on its face, well, you're talking about the Hillary Clinton renewed investigation. Why aren't you talking about that? There's a difference. Comey felt duty-bound to correct the record, his sworn testimony before Congress in which he said the Hillary investigation is closed. That doesn't apply to the Manafort and Trump campaign investigations. There is no record under oath to correct.
Interesting. Okay, a lot to think about there. I think that one of the big takeaways when you look at these stories is that this is just a total mess. All of this is a mess, and one wonders how the public gets fair representation to know if any wrongdoing has been done. When does a special prosecutor come in? Would that be the best for us, for the public, Greg?
It absolutely would. It does look like Loretta Lynch has been compromised all along. There are questions about Comey. So the president can go to the Court of Appeals, ask for the appointment of a special prosecutor. Is he going to do that? I doubt it. Instead, Congress can reauthorize the independent counsel statute. You and I talked about this before. And in that case, they can appoint the equivalent of a special prosecutor to be independent and authorized to look into this. I think the American public would have more confidence in that than a very compromised Loretta Lynch.
But just a quick question. Does that mean that special prosecutor has to start all over with these investigations, start from scratch?
Not necessarily. He could utilize the investigation that has been conducted by the FBI into both the classified emails and the Hillary Clinton Charity Foundation.
Interesting. We'll watch for that. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
John?
Well, Ohio is considered a must-win state for Donald Trump, but according to election officials, there are some precincts that may not yield a single vote for the GOP nominee. Peter Ducey reporting live from Cleveland with that. Peter?
And, John, something very unexpected is happening here in Cuyahoga County, always a bellwether. The early ballot requests from Democrats have dropped 35% since 2012, while the early ballot requests from Republicans are actually up 3%. And those numbers are especially remarkable because this is a county where in the past multiple polling places have reported 0 votes for the Republican ticket, something that election officials still expect to happen again next week.
There were multiple precincts that had 0 ballots for the Republican candidate. So I suspect that that will be close to the same in this presidential election. Maybe there will be a few here and there, but I expect that, we will still have 0 precincts in the urban areas of the county that will not cast a vote for the Republican candidate.
Experts say that even though a big 0 next to the Republican candidate's name looks suspicious, it's just a result of changing demographics and not voter fraud. And many volunteers rooting for the Republican ticket this time are just going to have to take those experts' word for it because the independent poll watchers Trump is asking to keep an eye on things at their local ballot box aren't going to be allowed to go anywhere near the voters in this county.
You just can't walk into a polling place and say, I'm here on behalf of Donald Trump to monitor the polls. So I think people are concerned that there's going to be violence, that there's going to be intimidation at the polls, particularly from some of the comments that Donald Trump made. Ohio is also an open carry state, so just like there was during the Republican National Convention here in Cleveland, it's possible that people could just come with their firearms and just walk outside of polling places, which could somehow be intimidating to people.
But officials told us that after a few weeks of early in-person voting, there have been no credible reports of voter fraud yet. John.
All right, Peter Ducey reporting live from Ohio. Thanks, Peter. Now say it is unlikely that Democrats can flip the House. The Cook Political Report headline reads, quote, House GOP majority looks assured but margin in doubt. Let's talk about these down-ballot races with Marianne Marsh, former senior advisor to then-Senator John Kerry. Noel Nickpour is a Republican strategist and former Republican congressional candidate in Florida's 18th district. Marianne, do you agree that Democrats are not very likely to be able to pick up control of the House?
No, the House they're not, but remember, the closer that the Democrats come to 20 seats, the more likely it is that if Hillary Clinton wins, that's the scenario it would happen, then it's going to make it easier for her to govern and get the Republicans to cooperate. I do think the Democrats win the Senate in this election, but if the Democrats can then pick up 15, 20 seats, anywhere in there, it makes it much tougher for the Republicans to not cooperate with Hillary Clinton, not cooperate with the Democratic Senate. They have to then try to negotiate, and that's exactly what voters want. They want to see Washington work, and the closer you get to 20 seats for the Democrats, the more likely that is to happen.
Noel, you ran as a Republican for a congressional seat. What do you think the Republicans' chances are? Are they going to lose seats? Are they going to retain control of the House of Representatives?
I actually think that the Republicans are going to maintain control of the Senate because the difference has been in the Republican Party between Trump and the establishment. Now, all those establishment voters, a lot of them have said that they're going to vote. They just may not vote for Trump, but they are going to protect their U.S. Senate seats. So I do see them getting out in large numbers and making sure that they vote and maintain control of the Senate. It's very important. One of the things that is very interesting is that the Koch brothers have released a new entourage of ads, and we are starting to see some of the polls that where Democrats were slightly ahead. It's starting to measure up, and it's starting to go neck and neck in some of these swing states that looked like it wouldn't be a good outcome for Republicans. It's starting to change.
Yesterday on Happening Now, I spoke with Karl Rove. He said that he thought that Friday's news from the FBI on the Clinton email situation could be a game changer when it comes to those down-ballot races. Listen.
And it's going to have down ballot effects. Indiana and Missouri, where he's already ahead, those states, I think, are going to, his margin is going to improve in those states, which helps the Republican Senate candidates in those states. And similarly in North Carolina and Nevada, where he's slightly behind, I think his position is going to strengthen, and that's going to help the down ballot candidates as well.
He, of course, referring to Donald Trump in that situation. Marianne, what do you think about that?
Well, I disagree with Karl on this. I mean, yes, the Comey news on Friday wasn't helpful in that respect to Hillary Clinton, but what I think you see now is she's on offense in all these states, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Those are states that Donald Trump absolutely, positively has to win, some combination of all of them, to get to the White House. She's campaigning hard in all of them, pouring more money in them, because the bigger her margin in those states are, not only does it lock the door on Donald Trump, it is more likely to bring up those Senate races and House races. So the better she does in these states, and you saw that before last week, the bigger her margin, you saw the Senate races come with her and come across that. So Patrick Murphy coming within shouting distance of Rubio. You have Katie McGinty over Toomey now in Pennsylvania. You see Maggie Hassan over Ayotte in New Hampshire. Those races come up with Clinton, and the better Clinton does, the better those Senate races do, which is why I think the Democrats are going to take the Senate back. I know Karl's working on those races hard, trying to get the Republicans to win them at the last minute, but I don't think it's going to happen.
All that being said, Noel, the excitement level among Clinton voters has taken a pretty significant dive since the email revelations of Friday, and if people aren't excited to vote for the Democratic candidate, that may affect the Democratic races down ballot.
Of course, you're exactly right. And the key word is passion. And that's where Donald Trump may have a significant number in pulling these people to the polls. And another thing you've got to look at is Hillary's weak spot. And the reason she is forced to spend a lot more money right now defending her reputation is her track record on honesty and not being forthcoming. And right now, with the Comey letter on Friday, that is in front and center, and it's got a lot of people very concerned. And I think what's going to happen is when you see these races, when you get 2 points, 3 points, 1 point, that is basically too close to call. And we are not going to really know until it gets down to the wire on this.
It's so down
John,
to the wire.
John, one last point.
Real quickly, Marianne.
Real quick. I mean, so this is where having a great ground game makes all the difference in the world, and the Clinton folks have that. That's worth 3 to 5 points that wins any of these states right now.
That is where she is said to have the advantage. But, you know, strange things have happened already this election season.
We'll see Tuesday.
Marianne Marsh, Noel Nickpour, thank you.
Thanks, John.
The minority voters of a national ballot security task force. Well, in his order now, federal judge John Vasquez pointed to this claim made in August by Governor Mike Pence.
Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee are working very, very closely with state governments and Secretary of States all over the country to ensure ballot integrity.
Vasquez wants, quote, all agreements regarding voter fraud, ballot security, ballot integrity, poll watching or poll monitoring. Efforts also with the Trump campaign to ensure ballot integrity and to recruit persons to act as poll watchers in Philadelphia, and, quote, a massive statewide anti-vote fraud effort in Michigan. But others, like veteran New Jersey Republican election law lawyer John Carbone, insist the RNC is not breaking the law.
There has been no finding in the last 27 years of any violation of the consent order. The Republican National Committee trains their staffers, they train their state people, they caution, they prohibit people from doing things, and they ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Well, the RNC sent out this email last month telling members not to poll watch, not to contact voters at the polls, or even tell voters that voter fraud is a crime, saying it does not want that consent decree violated. Back to you.
We'll watch it. Eric, thank you.
Right.
Driving home the latest revelations from Wikileaks, along with his message that Hillary Clinton can't be trusted. John Roberts is live for us in Miami, where Donald Trump's message is very different today than the one he delivered yesterday, which was about health care and policy. Today, hammering Hillary Clinton. Hi, John.
Still talking a lot about policy, Heather, but also hammering the Clinton campaign and the WikiLeaks revelations. He just left Miami, where he had a rally here at the Bayfront Amphitheater. About 4,000 people or so here just south of downtown Miami. He's off now to Orlando, Pensacola later on today, and then a rally tomorrow in Jacksonville. So spending a full day and a half in this so important state with its 29 electoral votes. Nationally, the race is pretty much locked up at 46 points apiece, according to the latest ABC News poll. But an interesting crosstab here to take a look at when it comes to trustworthiness and honesty. Donald Trump has an 8-point lead over Hillary Clinton, 46 to 38 points, which is why today, and he'll continue to do it through the rest of this tour here in Florida, he is driving the point home that the WikiLeaks revelations are showing us a side of the Clinton campaign that nobody knew before. There's the revelations about the Deputy Attorney General, Peter Kadzik, apparently in contact with the chairman of Hillary Clinton's campaign, John Podesta, about the release of those emails. Podesta writing him back to say additional chances for mischief. And again today, talking about the fact that Donna Brazile, who's the interim head of the DNC, gave Hillary Clinton on at least one occasion, and probably two occasions, the questions, or at least an idea of the questions for upcoming debates. Here's what Trump had to say about that today here in Miami.
So she got the answers, cheating. She got the questions, cheating. And then she, rather than reporting them, rather than saying this shouldn't be happening, she used them against Bernie Sanders. She probably got them against me, too, except we won the debate so easy, I don't think it mattered.
We should say that there is no evidence at this point, at the very least, to suggest that she got any of the questions to the presidential debates. And I can tell you with certainty, Heather, that she certainly didn't get any of the questions from Chris Wallace.
That is for sure. We keep a really tight handle on those things. So tell us about this. Donald Trump went really hard today on the whole idea that goes over really well with his supporters, that the system is rigged.
Yeah, what that's all about is in these closing days of the campaign is to try to motivate his people out to the polls. You know, there are some conflicting polls here in the Sunshine State. The new CNN poll has got Hillary Clinton up by 3. A New York Times poll from a couple of days ago has got Donald Trump up by 4. Republicans are leading by about 17 or 18,000 returns, at least in the early voting, counting absentee and in person. So Trump is trying to get every person he can out to the polls. So he says the system is rigged and there's only one way to change it. Here's what he said today in Miami.
Hillary is not the victim, and the American people, frankly, are the victims of this rigged and corrupt system in every way. But this is your chance, finally, to change it. November 8th.
And Trump is also suggesting that people who have already voted in certain states can change their vote. And that is allowed in 7 states in the U.S. 3 of those happen to be battleground states. Wisconsin, which is where he first mentioned it, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are the remaining states where you could do that. I don't know if anybody will, but he's certainly encouraging people to do it.
Well, John, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because we'll be talking about that later, and we'll tell our viewers where they can change their votes if they happen to live in that state. John Roberts, thanks so much, live in Florida for us. Well, let's take take a further look at what John Roberts was talking about, a timeline of the CNN Donna Brazile story. On March 5th, while she was working as a commentator for CNN, Brazile emails the Clinton campaign manager giving a heads up about a woman with a rash who would be asking a question about lead problems in Flint, Michigan. Well, the very next day, CNN hosted a town hall meeting debate in Flint, Michigan, in which that very question was asked. And then on March the 12th, Brazile tells a Clinton campaign staffer that she got a question from a debate co-moderator, Roland Martin. The very next day, CNN hosted another town hall debate, and that question about the death penalty was asked verbatim. Now, after these leaks came to light, Brazile resigns or is fired from CNN, depending how you look at it. So the issue is this. Even though it's now clear that Brazile was actively lobbying for Hillary Clinton in the primaries against Bernie Sanders, she keeps her job as the interim head of the Democratic National Committee. Now, you may recall over the summer that is exactly why the former DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, lost her job because she was seen as having advocated for Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. Donna Brazile doing the very same thing. Well, Republican Vice Presidential nominee Mike Pence weighing in on Hillary Clinton's email trouble.
Millions of Americans, Bill, were very troubled this summer when the FBI concluded that Hillary Clinton had been, in their words, extremely careless with classified information on a private server when she was Secretary of State, and yet they didn't recommend to continue the investigation or charges.
But that is not the only thing the FBI is investigating. We'll ask a former federal prosecutor about the seemingly chronic investigations. The FBI finding itself mired in a fierce political battle after publicly announcing just days before the election that they were examining newly discovered emails that could be tied to the Clinton email probe. And then, in a major surprise, the Bureau releasing documents involving Bill Clinton's pardon of Mark Rich, a fugitive Democratic donor. Well, this release came from a Freedom of Information Act request. Joe DeGeneva is a former U.S. attorney and former federal prosecutor as well. Joe, thanks for joining us. Perhaps nobody knows D.C. and the legal system better than you. Remind us who Mark Rich was.
Mark Rich was a fugitive financier who was indicted by the Southern District of New York and fled the country before he was indicted and lived in Switzerland. He was pardoned by President Clinton within the last hours of his presidency after Denise Rich, Mark Rich's ex-wife, gave a huge sum of money to the Clinton Library.
Do you believe there are any parallels between that case and the whole investigation that we're going through right now with the Clinton Foundation?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt there's parallels. Right now, inside and outside the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the agents have said to me they consider the director to be a dirty cop. They consider Loretta Lynch to be politically corrupt. They believe she should be disqualified from participating in any of this investigation because she prevented 2 grand juries in both subject matter areas, and they believe that a special prosecutor should be appointed. They say that because no grand jury was used in the original investigation of Hillary Clinton's private server, they did not discover the Wiener laptop. If there had been a grand jury, subpoenas, and search warrants, that laptop would have been discovered 1 year ago, and the result that Comey announced in July would have been different.
And this is what some of your sources are telling you. Let's drill down into that one a little bit more, because 2 parallel investigations, essentially. We only just recently learned about the Clinton Foundation investigation. We all know about the email server investigation, but a lot of folks look at this and say, why not more focus on the Clinton Foundation investigation? Explain what you believe that was all about.
Well, there's no focus on the Clinton Foundation investigation, even though there are some assistant U.S. attorneys in New York and some FBI agents looking at it. Loretta Lynch has refused to permit a grand jury to look into the Clinton Foundation. There is now a deep-seated belief inside the FBI and among the former FBI community that Loretta Lynch is literally physically interfering with the execution of the law, and that she should be disqualified from having anything to do with these cases. This is really such a serious level that the agents are defying their leadership in leaking information to the press.
You know, when it was asked if she would recuse herself, back in July, she answered it this way. Let's listen. I want to get your reaction.
Well, a recusal would mean that I wouldn't even be briefed on what the findings were or what the actions going forward would be. And while I don't have a role in those findings, in coming up with those findings or making those recommendations as to how to go forward, I'll be briefed on it, and I will be accepting their recommendations.
So she still wanted to be briefed. Let me get your reaction on that. How can a sitting attorney general who has deep ties, she had been appointed by Clinton in that New York office in which she previously served before heading down to D.C. to become an attorney general, how can she be unbiased and fair in this investigation?
Well, she can't be, and especially because she met with President Clinton, former President Clinton, on her plane, on the tarmac in Phoenix, privately for 39 minutes, and tried to hide the meeting by having no photographs allowed to be taken of it. This is why the agents are in revolt against the senior leadership of the Department of Justice, as well as against Director Comey. See, they believe that Comey should have said to the Attorney General back when they first started the private server investigation, Madam Attorney General, we need a grand jury. She refused to do that. They believe that he should have said to her at that point, either you give me a grand jury or I will resign. He didn't do that. They feel that he let them down. And in my opinion, Comey not only let them down, he let down the American people and the rule of law.
All right, Joe DeGeneva, thanks so much for joining us. Always great to see you and great to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, have you voted yet? Early voting is real today in Las Vegas and also Tempe, Arizona, as her team hopes its heavy investment in field organizing will drive higher than expected Latino turnout in some of these key swing states. Our senior political correspondent, Mike Emanuel, is live for us in Tempe with the latest. Hi there, Mike.
Heather, nice to see you. This trip comes as there's new polling about the western states that Hillary Clinton is going to visit today and other key battlegrounds. Let's take a look at the latest numbers. A new CNN ORC survey has Donald Trump with a 5-point lead over Hillary Clinton in traditionally red Arizona, 49% to 44%. In Nevada, Clinton's first stop today, Trump has a 6-point edge in that same survey, 49% to 43%. In Florida, critical with 29 electoral votes, the new CNN survey has Clinton up 49% to 47%. And then there's Pennsylvania. The CNN survey has Clinton 48, Trump 44. Clinton left battleground Florida earlier for this trip out west. Part of today's effort is to try and energize Latino voters. Before she left Florida late last night, Clinton blasted some Trump supporters who turned out to heckle her.
I am sick and tired of the negative, dark, divisive, dangerous vision and behavior of people who support Donald Trump. It is time for us to say no. We are not going backwards. We're going forward into a brighter future.
Part of this trip to the West is the Clinton team trying to play offense in states where Republicans traditionally play well, like Arizona, a battleground like Nevada. With her flying much of the day, Clinton has the luxury of the president and vice president of the United States out in other battlegrounds, making the case for her.
Yeah,
Heather?
They are everywhere, certainly on both sides. Mike Emanuel, enjoy Arizona there. Well, we are just 6 days away from this election, and already more than 29 million people have voted early. Now, that's nearly twice the number from the same point back in 2012. This is Google Trends searches, announces the question. Well, this is one of the top questions being asked. Where do I vote early? That has reached an all-time high. Our chief correspondent, Jonathan Hunt, is live for us in Norwalk, California, with what the Google Trends search is now telling us. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, Heather. You know, it's really interesting what Google Trends is showing us. It seems to be bearing out what we've seen in these lines behind us here at the LA County Registrar's office, that there is greater interest than ever in early voting. Google Trends has been measuring how many people put in that search term, where do I vote early? And that's the number of searches is up 3,200% from September to October. The highest number of searches have been in Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. There's also a data analysis company called Catalyst that is looking at the early voting figures. Some interesting points that they have found. More registered Democrats than Republicans are voting early. The Hispanic vote is up across the board. The youth vote is down across the board. It'll be interesting to see, Heather, whether whether those are trends that are reflected on Election Day itself. Heather?
Okay, so here at Fox, we are asking voters to get involved through social media, and you are a part of that. So tell us what you're seeing so far.
Yeah, well, we want everybody to get involved. So if you have voted, if you're going to vote, post that photo, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, however you like, hashtag Fox News 2016, and we might feature it on election night itself. Right now, we're going to feature a selfie from Jessica Biel. She posted it having voted today on Instagram, and she sort of teased her husband, Justin Timberlake, a little bit, because Jessica Biel waited, she said, until she got home to post that photo, rather than doing it, posting a photo from the voting booth, which is, of course, what Justin Timberlake famously did, and where he was voting in Tennessee. That is not legal, so check any laws before you take any photos. And in fact, don't be like Justin Timberlake, be like me. As a first-time American citizen, I voted today. I waited until I got outside this polling place until I took my photo. But I am very, very proud indeed to be a first-time voter in the great United States of America. Heather?
Jonathan, we're so happy for you. You became a citizen, a U.S. citizen, what was it, about 2 years ago now?
Yeah, just about 2 years, almost exactly.
We are
Thanks
so happy to have you, and I can see how proud you are, and that is exactly what it is all about, and the way that you feel about your vote. So many of us have to get back to that enthusiasm for it. And glad you didn't wind up in the pokey.
Very happy to have done it. Very proud.
Glad you took your picture out there, not inside. Jonathan Hunt, thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, as he mentioned, we want you to be a part of our election night coverage. You can post your picture on Facebook, on Twitter, or on Instagram with the hashtag Fox News 2016. You can see it on air on election night in our brand new studio, and that studio is amazing. You'll want to check it out. Well, speaking of early voting, Donald Trump is targeting Clinton-leaning Michigan and Wisconsin in a very big way. These are both states where Trump and Bernie Sanders pulled out wins in their respective primaries earlier this year. So does he really have a shot? Let's talk about it with Bree Payton. She's a staff writer for The Federalist, and Leslie Marshall, Fox News contributor and syndicated radio talk show host. Ladies, welcome. Great to have you here. Leslie, let me start with you. So Donald Trump is spending a whole lot of time there in Michigan and in Wisconsin. Both those states went for Democrats. I mean, Paul Ryan back in 2012 as the VP candidate couldn't even pull in Wisconsin. Is that a good strategy for Donald Trump to focus his efforts there, or do you disagree with it?
I disagree focusing the efforts there. I understand why, and certainly when he is so appealing to the blue-collar worker crowd. But if you look at those who forecast like 538, Hillary Clinton has almost an 80%, and I'm rounding up, almost an 80% chance of winning both of those states. I would actually put those states in the win column. If I were Donald Trump, I would really focus more of my efforts and money on other states like Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and even Arizona.
And Bree, what do you think about him spending so much time there and focusing efforts there?
I think it's a decent strategy. I think there's been a lot less polling in both of those states, and I think in particular with all this breaking news surrounding Hillary Clinton's, the reopening investigation into her emails and some of the shady business that she did during her tenure as Secretary of State, I think it makes sense to really barrel down and focus on those two states. I think particularly in Wisconsin, it kind of makes sense. This is a state that has seen a huge amount of economic growth and recovery under Republican governors, so I could see why they would be kind of reluctant to undo a lot of that progress under a president like Hillary Clinton.
Well, and you mentioned the polling. There's not a ton of polling coming out of at least Wisconsin, for example, so you have to wonder if perhaps they're overstating Hillary Clinton supporters, but we'll have to just stay tuned to find out. I want to ask you both about this. Donald Trump, he's been going hard. You can switch your vote. We've got a graphic that shows some of those states where you can change your vote after you had already voted. I wonder if you think, Leslie, that this is going to have any kind of a big impact. Look at these states. What do you think?
No.
No,
no, I don't.
Why not?
No.
Because
no,
a lot has changed. A lot of those people had cast their ballots maybe a month or so ago, and now we know a lot more information today than we did back then.
No, I don't think so, because traditionally in our elections in current day, when we look back, or historically, we're really a two-party system government, and also that's how we think. We're very close to a 50-50 nation divided. So most Democrats overwhelmingly are going to vote for Hillary. Most Republicans overwhelmingly will vote for Trump, although 28% of the GOP right now early voting in Florida seem to be going for Hillary, and she is up with independents. But at the end of the day, I think when a person makes their decision, they're going to keep that. Are there one or two people that may do it? Yes, not enough to move the needle that would help or hurt either of them.
Bree, you see it having any kind of impact or not enough to move the needle?
Sure. So I just spoke with a voter actually in California the other day who said that he was planning to vote for Hillary Clinton. But then when all this news started breaking that the Clinton campaign was basically working in cahoots with the Department of Justice, and that she was kind of getting, this rigged system and this rigged investigation, he decided to not go ahead and vote for her. So I think that early voting is bad for democracy. And I could see a lot of people who did cast a vote for Hillary Clinton seeing all this kind of stuff, who are really frustrated with the political system and the way that powerful people are able to skirt the law, changing that vote and wanting to go through with that. And I think it's important to be telling voters that this is an option that they can have.
Well, it's certainly a debate worth having in the future. Ladies, thanks so much for joining us today. Bree Payton and Leslie Marshall, always good to